Sky Squad, we are back in the building. So, I have been telling you guys that I have been wanting to discuss the sort of business or beyond the business of reality TV. We haven't quite come up with a name yet. But my question is always for people who come on these shows, like, how do you make your money? What do you do outside of reality? And sometimes reality TV shows will show us a little bit. And I feel like with this particular person right here that we have with us today, Miss Meredith Marks, who is the first to dive into this business conversation with us, I had to, like, I just left Good Day DC. So I was like, let me leave my suit on for Meredith and and throw a little touch of bling on it as well. In honor of Meredith Marks. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be on here today with you and to be the first one. That's very flattering. Thank you so much. And I love the bling, a little bling for the Ice Queen. I love
Yes,
it.
yes. We had to serve a little bit of ice for the Ice Queen. How, and we know that you have, well, a lot of us were introduced to you from obviously the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And you already had a thriving business prior to that. I mean, you had Rihanna wearing your pieces, CHARLIZE THERON wearing your pieces. So you had major names wearing pieces from Meredith Marks. Were you at all worried about what that would do for your business going into this world of reality television?
Yes, of course. I mean, the thing is, as with really, I think any kind of designer item, whether it's jewelry, clothing, shoes, whatever, I think that people want it because they relate to the brand at some level, whatever that may mean for the brand. They like the story, they like whatever, the designer, so on and so forth. And obviously, going on reality television, the brand becomes very much about me. And if you don't like me, you're not going to want to support my business or buy anything from me. So, and obviously, the fine jewelry market is a very specific market. It's not like selling, designer shoes, which is a much larger market. Fine jewelry is specific. It's a different customer. And yes, of course, I was nervous for sure.
What has been the, I would say, effect of you being on the show with regards to that particular aspect of your business?
So what's very interesting is when we wrapped filming season one, it was maybe a week, 2 weeks, depending on where you were in the country before we shut down from the pandemic.
Mhm.
And pre-pandemic, I had a business model that was very much event oriented. And jewelry in general is, even if you're just, selling to stores, like, I used to sell to Neiman Marcus. They want you to physically come in the store, interact with the customers. It's a very event oriented sort of business. And so, I had, of course, the stores I worked with prior to the pandemic that we would go in person, whether it was me or a representative, somebody was there. I would have a lot of private events I did all over the world, luncheons, cocktail parties, this, that, and the other, introducing new collections. And so the pandemic hit, and obviously that came to a screeching halt. And what was very interesting was that with the show, it drove so much traffic to my website that I never really had before because, again, fine jewelry, people usually like to touch it, they like to see it, before they buy. If they've seen it, they know the brand, then they're more comfortable buying online. But that's why I was running around doing all these things so that people could be exposed to the brand. And with the show, thankfully, it drove so much traffic to my website that sort of was like, okay, I might not have survived the pandemic without the show. I'll be totally honest. My business might not have
Really?
made it. Yeah, I did not have a huge online business. Like I said, it was a lot of private events. We would do a lot of sales at a luncheon. You have 30, 40 women who love your brand and they're coming to a luncheon, they're coming to shop for the most part. I mean, some are friends and they're coming to say hello, but
Right.
most people are coming to shop. And so the events were hugely successful and generated a lot of revenue, which was just completely gone and obliterated from the pandemic. And even my store, we had to shut down for a few months as well. I think it was 2 months actually. So it was, we had a big loss in revenue when all of that happened. So the show drove a ton of traffic to the website, which really I think kind of kept us afloat during that time. Now, of course, we're back to normal-ish, I think, whatever that means now. The new normal, whatever you
Right.
want to call it. And everything's great. I've no complaints. Now, the store is normal again. I'm going to do an event during New York Fashion Week, which will probably, I did a couple of events over these last like maybe 4, 5, 6 months that were kind of like smaller, not such a big deal. This will be the first one I'm really like feel like I'm back on track with.
Okay.
So
Okay.
good. I'm excited.
So when you first, well, I guess I kind of need to go back first before I ask this question, but law, you've had a hand in real estate. How did you, reading your bio, it's easy to tell, but for someone who hasn't read it, how did you go from law, real estate, doing all of these amazing things, obviously getting married, having children, into fine jewelry? Like, I know that there was always a love there, but at what point did you say, I am going to do this? Because I think that for someone who is watching this, they had that same idea in their minds. So for you, what was that pivot point?
So, I actually started out my undergraduate studies as a fine arts major and quickly pivoted out because I thought, how am I going to ever have a real, career where I'm earning a living in the arts, which obviously many people do, but it's not an easy path. We know
Right.
that. And so I then was I took a criminal justice class in undergrad, and I was like, this is fascinating. I've always loved the criminal mind. I always thought it was just so interesting. And I thought, oh, I should do a double major or another minor or whatever. And I would have had to stay in undergrad for an extra year. So that's why I applied to law school. I was like, well, I'll just apply to law school. I don't know what I want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Got into law school, started at Northwestern. After my first semester, I said, this is really interesting, but I don't think it's what I really want to do. And so I applied to the business school as well, ended up doing a joint degree between the two schools. And during that time, I had been doing Pilates in LA for many years, and we didn't really have anywhere in Chicago. So during that time, I had a couple business partners. We opened a Pilates studio, which ended up transitioning into a full scale gym. We were the first to introduce gyrotonics to Chicago, and we had yoga and weights and everything. And that was fun for a while, but then it made me not want to work out because it was like stressful. And I'd go to the gym to work out and I'd end up working. So got tired of that after a little while. And real estate was always another passion of mine. It's, my father was always in real estate, and it was just something I loved. And to me, it's very creative, um, building homes, things like that. And so I did all of that. And so basically, I was a young mother. I had just graduated from law school and business school, and I was dropping my oldest son, Reed, has not been on the show, but we've talked about him a little bit, off at kindergarten. And I was very aggressively mugged, dragged across the street by my handbag. And yeah, 9 a.m., not when you think anything's going to happen.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, and I wouldn't let go, not because I meant to not let go, but because, you go to protect yourself when
Right, right.
you're under attack. It's like you don't know what's happening. So, yeah, muggers don't come for me. I won't let go.
Okay.
Just so you all know. I'm not the one to go after. Find someone else who's going to you. It's not going to be me. So anyway, I was dragged across the street by my bag. A taxi driver got out, started chasing the guy, whatever. It was a very traumatic experience. And through trauma, I think we always reevaluate. And so
Right.
I was like, what am I doing? I'm not really doing what I want to be doing. And so I got out of, the health club industry. The real estate stuff I always really loved, but I had 3 small children and I literally was just not at all present. I was on the phone with contractors 24/7. It was crazy. It was just too intense for what I had going on with all these little kids. So I sold everything, and it was luckily right before, that big real estate market crash we had. Yeah. So that was very fortunate. I'd love to say that I had the foresight to predict the crash, but that wasn't it. But I was saved. And I kind of took a year or two off to just sort of figure out what I wanted to do. And I was the stock market was crazy. I was day trading for myself, having a good time with that. And I jewelry was always my passion. It's what I absolutely loved. And so I decided to dive in head first, and I did, and everyone thought I was completely insane because we were in a horrific recession.
Right.
And my family, everyone was like, what is wrong with you? Why would you go into a luxury business in the height of, the worst recession of anyone's lifetime, da 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 da. And I was like, because here's an opportunity that I wouldn't have had before. Back then, jewelry was very much like people who were in that business through their family. Like, it's
Right.
not as much anymore, but then it really, really was. It was very hard to get people to work with you from a manufacturing standpoint, from, the diamond dealers, the loose stones, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, now I can. I'm not holding inventory like everybody else. People need business right now. They can't, nobody's giving them business. So they're going to work with me when I say I want to make one piece. Whereas before they'd be like, nope, got to make, 10 or whatever. And so I did. And I just, I took it slow. I didn't go crazy. Took it one step at a time.
Meredith, you're a hustler.
Yeah.
You have the spirit of the hustle. I mean, just in terms of listening to the trajectory. I mean, you did this, and it seems as though, like, I know we all look back at our lives, and sometimes things we've lived several lives, within this one, but you really have.
Yeah.
And I don't even think that story about being mugged, I mean, that should have been on the show. Like, because it's a
Um,
moment.
I wonder, I know I've talked about it. I don't know. Maybe it's never aired. I don't
Maybe they just,
remember.
there is a lot of chaos that tends to go on with the show, so maybe
Yeah, we've got a lot going on there.
and for those of you guys who are watching, in terms of seasons 1 and 2 of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, we obviously know that they have aired. In terms of if there will be a season 3, that's what we'll say today. Hopefully at some point, maybe later down the line, if Meredith is on the season, we'll talk to her about that then. Just to satiate you guys who are interested in Meredith and what she does in the TV world. Today, the conversation is focused strictly on the business. Now, with that being said, when you start this line and you start working with the manufacturers, how long did it take before you had your first pieces and then you decided that you're going to open a physical location?
A while.
Okay.
So, in terms of having my first pieces, what I did, because I really needed to test out different manufacturers, and thankfully I did it this way because I went through, I don't know, 10, 12 different people before I found the right fit. But what I did was I had pieces that I really just selected. They weren't my own designs. They were pieces that I liked, that I purchased, and I showed them at a private trunk show. And I took pre-orders. So
Mm,
that way I knew that if I could try out the manufacturers, and if in fact they were unable to um, send the pieces, make the pieces, whatever it may be, I could fulfill the order with the sample that I already had so that I wouldn't like disappoint.
okay, so that is a little gem right there that I think was super smart. what gave you that, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, did somebody tell you to do that, or did you just think this is the smartest route to go?
It was instinct because I didn't know, especially because remember, it was a really rough recession. I didn't know if these people would be in business. I didn't know if they would deliver on time. And a lot of jewelry can take a really long time for some reason. Like certain manufacturers are, now with the pandemic, everything's slower, but
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, even some people would take 12 weeks to make a piece, you just don't know. And so I didn't want, the last thing I wanted was to say to someone, oh sure, it will be here in 4 to 8 weeks, and then they're waiting and waiting and waiting. At least I know I could fulfill it with the sample and be okay, and not disappoint the customer, because I didn't want the bad but yeah, no, it was instinct. I knew I had to try these people out. I didn't know how it would go. And that is it, in making anything, any kind of product, I do think it's really important that you test out your manufacturers, because it's really disappointing when you put a lot of money into something and it doesn't come out the way you were anticipating.
I completely understand. I have a CMOS capsule brand, and I think finding the manufacturer is, oh my God, it is probably one of the most nerve-wracking processes to me, because everything in the future hinges on what you find with this particular manufacturer or the group that you find. What tips can you give to someone out there who may be wanting to get into any type of business, whether it's fine jewelry, jewelry in general? What tips can you give to help someone else find the right manufacturer?
I think the key is to really try a multitude of people and give
Mm,
especially, I mean, obviously, if you're looking to make, t-shirts, it's a different story. You can get a
right.
sample made pretty easily. It's not a big deal. But if you're looking at something like fine jewelry, where your sample is costly to begin with, or some other high-end luxury product, I would say if you're putting together a collection of, you know, 20 pieces to start, or whatever it may be, I would try 10 different people, two each, because if the quality is not there, you're not going to want to put your name on it. And
Mhm.
I've had situations even in recent years where I've just tried somebody else out, because um not every like jewelry factory does everything. Like for example, the my predominant production office that I use, they don't do enamel pieces. So I had to find somebody else who would, when I wanted to do a collection in enamel. So you always are looking for new people and more people. But like I've tried, so I try out the enamel people, and then I'm like, okay, great, you did a great job on that. Why don't we try doing a diamond piece together? And I get the diamond piece. I'm like, oh no, this is not exactly the quality I was looking for. It's fine, Chloe has the ring, she gets to wear it. But I'm not gonna sell it because I'm not comfortable with the way it came out, you
Yeah.
know? So that to me is like dip your toe in the water. Trade shows are always a good place to get leads for
Okay.
sure, for anything. But I mean, I traveled all over the world trying to find sourcing for stones for production, etc. And my main production office is in Hong Kong. Um, and I have certain things like enamel. They don't do that really in Hong Kong. That's done in India. Most of the stones are cut in India, some in Thailand, whatever. So I've spent a lot of time. It's really a passion for me. It's not
Yeah.
just a business. You can't go into something like fine jewelry unless you are very passionate, because it is a really hard industry, really competitive, and everything is to the half millimeter. Like it is very precise. So my advice is, unless you really love jewelry, don't do it. It has to be just as much of a passion as a business, or you'll never make it. It's rough.
So you would actually you were physically going to each of these places, and you were, let me see what this looks like. Um, can how did you was this as simple as a Google search, or how did you find these places? And then that's one thing, and then it's the investment of traveling to these places as
Yeah.
well. Like, so how does one go about finding manufacturers, vendors, people who do what you need them to do?
I think now it's a little bit easier than when I first started. You know, I mean, back then, yes, I had to physically go. Now I think you could probably test a lot more out for online resourcing.
Okay.
I was fortunate, you know, my whole thing started with my husband, Seth, said, I have a business trip to Hong Kong and India. And I said, but I was like, that's great. I'm going to start working on a jewelry collection. Um, so I had the resourcing from, you know, I had my first trip paid for, which was great. I tagged along, and I had to buy a flight, but whatever.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit of, not a lot, but a little bit of networking off of his network to some
Gotcha.
degree, because he did have people on the ground in these places, and so I could kind of ask. Not that jewelry was really their forte, but I did get some leads off of that, and I kind of took it from there, and then I took one lead and would start, you know, working to the next, and I really found my current production office not directly through a lead from Seth, but they sent me to somebody else who then in turn, I was like, well, I really want to do a lot of, you know, micro pave settings, da, da, da. And they said, oh, this is the person. And I went and met with them, and they ended up actually being my predominant production company at this point. So you just
This
have to use your network in any way you can, and like I said, trade shows too. You can go to, you know, the Hong Kong jewelry show and probably find an abundance of people who are willing to manufacture, you know, or whatever. I mean, I go there all the time to find loose stones. It's a great resource.
I
Not
just
right now.
Oh.
Not right now. Hong Kong's on pause for the time being. They're doing it in Singapore this year, but you get the idea.
I get it. I just want to say, first of all, this is so exciting to me because I feel like I'm following the breadcrumbs to, how you got to be so successful in this space. And it's just like, I'm kind of geeking out over here because this stuff really interests me, even more so than some of the drama that I talk about on a day to day basis. Because I think it's just so fascinating that people, so you had the wherewithal to say, I don't want to do something that I was doing before. I want to take out a risk and do something for myself, and you made it a success. So just thank you for this already. Um, in terms of in the past, at least for the past 2 seasons with your cast, was it a situation where they wanted to support, your business in terms of maybe wearing some pieces? How does that come into play?
I would say for the most part, my cast has been pretty supportive. I think, quite frankly, everyone who has been a full-time cast member on the show has bought something other than Jenny. She's the
Okay.
only one who didn't buy anything, and she had a very short run, obviously, as we all
Right.
know.
Right.
But yeah, no, all the other women have, bought something. They'll wear stuff if I want to loan it to them, whatever. They've all been supportive. I have not one complaint about that. I can complain about them on other things, but not on that.
Okay, we'll save those complaints for another day. Um, so obviously, you've had the luxury, and I guess it's maybe a luxury of also being able to have your family on the show as well. And we know that, it was awesome that we got to see Brooks have his own moment to shine with his own fashion line. How did you have a hand in any of that in terms of, because obviously he's gotten the design bug from somewhere. So did you have a hand in that, or did he sort of put all of that together, on his own?
He really did that on his own. I mean, I give guidance and stuff, like especially during the pandemic when there were a lot of supply chain problems. He might call me and be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't get my sets. There are all these delays," and I'd give a resource here or there, or things like that. But in terms of the actual design and any of that, he 100% does all of that on his own.
Mm.
I mean, he'll ask my opinion, but that's about it. He's very good with that. And in fact, like, I've had him do some drawings for me even, he's great. He does not need my help on that at all.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I think it's for especially for him to be. I listen. I know people who are like in high school and in college who are doing some of the same things and who are designing their own apparel. But I do think it's amazing that he was able to put these things together himself and then organize the whole fashion show. I think it's awesome because I think it just goes to show like he also has that same sort of hustle spirit that you have.
He really does. And I mean, he just released his Pride collection, which is really fun and cute and chic, and I love it. Of course, I love the rainbow too, so that doesn't hurt. And he has a really, really cool collection coming out. I don't know when he's going to be ready to release it. I'm guessing the other things will probably, he'll probably do a drop at a time.
Hmm.
And my guess is starting sometime in the fall with the other pieces, but I've seen all of them. They are super chic.
Okay.
And I'm really excited about it. So he has a whole collection coming out. I could not be more proud. And he's doing really, really well. He's graduated from NYU in the spring, and now he is full force ahead. So
Nice. Congratulations to him. And I noticed you mentioned Pride Collection. You have been a really big supporter, especially on the show, of the LGBTQIA plus community. Where does that come from for you? Because I mean, it's one thing to say I'm supportive of, but you take the actions behind it. Why is that important to you? And first of all, I want to say thank you for being a person of action in that regard.
yeah. So for me, I have always been very active at a small level because I didn't have a public platform previously. But like, I mean, even when I was 12, 13 years old, I was, a supporter of the ACLU and social causes, being able to be comfortable in your own skin at whatever level we're talking about, whether it's, sexuality, race, anything like that. Those are things to me that are just so important in life. Like, somebody feeling bad about who they are because of the way they look, or their sexual orientation, or whatever it may be. It's important to me. It's a big problem. And when you look at all these different groups, obviously we want to support everybody, but you also want to focus on who needs the most support at this juncture.
Right.
And in my view, in thinking about it, I think that some of the most persecuted people right now are the trans youth. I mean, I don't think I just say I think that. I think it's pretty much factual. And so it's very important to me to support. It's important for people to be able to be comfortable in their own skin and be able to be who they are and not be tortured for it. It's terrible. So, these things are just they're the real reason why I went on the show at the end of the day. Of course, you want, your business to do well and everything else, but to be able to support the causes that you care about, that you think are important, to have an impact on this world in some way, shape, or form is the most rewarding thing you can do in life.
I agree. I agree. I do have one final, I think, fun question for you. Well, two actually, and you can answer them however you like. Um, as a businesswoman and as a person who has starred on 2 seasons of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, what do you think um, a reality star should do in order to maintain their longevity, not necessarily in the field of reality, but just business wise in general?
I do think that, I think it's interesting because everything I was just talking about sort of ties right back to that. When businesses have a passion to them, whether it's like right now, ESG is such a big thing, you know, in corporations. Everyone's talking about their new ESG plan. Whatever it may be that you're giving back to society in some capacity, I think is really important for sustaining a business. And whether that means you do like a bunch of different endeavors or you have a single purpose, you know, like some companies will donate back a percentage of all their proceeds, or maybe I do a lot of different events based on what's going on at the time and what's important to me at the moment. You know, I think it's very important to tie back to the things that you care about in society to actually have a sustainable business. Because, like I said, I mean, at least in, you know, something that's design oriented where people have a lot of choices, they want to come to you because they feel a connection to the brand. And that connection is usually going to be because the brand has some kind of purpose above and beyond just creating a piece.
Mm, mm. I like that. And my final question for you is there anything that you have coming up next that you want to tell us about or that you want to promote? What can we be on the lookout with for
Well,
Meredith?
you have a lot of time here. No, I'm kidding. I got a lot of stuff going on. So we've been really working on developing a full lifestyle brand, and
Okay.
you know, I've already expanded into a lot of accessories, some outerwear, you know, a lot of different merch, things like that. Um, I have a coffee that I've been working
I
on for
saw
quite
that.
some time. Yes, we've had some supply chain issues and then we resolved those. And then I had some staffing issues. And so I was too afraid. I was like, we got to wait on the coffee until I feel like I'm more well staffed. So now, supposedly, fingers crossed, we should be getting the first batch in January. And that is all about women's causes. It's going to be, we're working with a predominantly women run farm, and we will be donating a percentage of proceeds back to some kind of a female charity each quarter. We'll change each quarter. So I'm really excited about that. And we're working on opening a lounge in Salt Lake City that will be a LGBTQ friendly lounge. It's not a gay
Wow.
bar. The
Okay.
idea is, you know, about just acceptance and inclusivity. It's going to be very like chic and up.
Oh, I think you're mute.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
I didn't realize my AirPod wasn't fully charged up. Anyway, so so we're opening this lounge and it's going to be super chic, super fun, light bites. We're working on it. It's a work in process. And and then I've got like a whole lavender bath product collection I'm working on. So everything's going to be tying back to the concept of engage and disengage. Coffee on the engaged side, lavender on the disengaged side. It should be fun.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, we will be sure to stay engaged with everything that you have going on. Make sure you guys are visiting meredithmarks.com for everything Meredith Marks, and be sure to follow her on Instagram. I will have all of your links down in the description below so they'll know exactly where to go to get all of their fine jewelry, to get their coffee coming soon, okay, and to get their products where they can either engage or disengage.
Absolutely.
Meredith.
Life, engaging and disengaging.
Meredith, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. This was everything to me, and I hope that it is everything else to someone who is hoping to get into business, to understand what it takes to run a business, specifically from the lens of someone who is in the spotlight on reality TV, because it's more than just about being on reality TV. There's also a business that, you know, goes on behind it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so much fun chatting with you today, and I hope I'll be back soon.
We hope so too. Skye Squad, thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you in the next video. video.